So we seem to be being driven by the Red Queen hypothesis straight into Pandora's box. And it's hard to tell if the motivation for that is seeking ever more luxury and comfort, or a hope that there's some kind of weapon or power inside that we can use to kill our enemies. And there may be something like a poison in Pandora's box. There usually is. This has always been the nature of the search for technology. The greater the tool, the greater the weapon. But the problem this time is the weapon is not in our hands. If there is poison in this box, it's still in the snake. And we're all here hoping that this is going to be a snake we can control. And maybe we can for a while, just like we can control nuclear weapons so far. Or as a dictatorship may be benevolent for a while. But I think we're aware that it seems like we're stacking plates, higher and higher. And each one is something which has the capacity to end the world. And this is certainly something which has the capacity to be world-ending in ways we can't really comprehend. And it seems to me that the conversation right now is oriented around what's AI doing right now? Letting students cheat in exams, passing the bar, exponentially improving, creating images, music, but I don't want to get too much into the weeds of what AI is doing right now, because it's going to change. Like, yesterday it was impossible that AI could create music. That was the preserve of human minds. Today it's possible, tomorrow it will be boring. So I want to get out of the weeds, really, of the minutiae of what AI can do, and just into some broad ideas about whether or not it's a good idea. Like, why are we developing this? What could it be like? And philosophically, do we want that? And perhaps what should we do about it? And I'll be really open. This is just something that I want to put some thought into and discuss. For some dumb reason, I feel like I want to put it out just to have some contact with people about it. I feel like this is an important thing for humans to discuss. And obviously, at any point in human history, I think it's fairly documented that it really doesn't make too much difference what the general population thinks about something. The elites are going to do what they're going to do. But hey, I mean, we can have a chat about it and see, how we feel as we watch the world change. And I mean, hey, at least it's not a boring time to be alive, right? Just might not be a very long one. So this is just some thoughts on AI, jumping off point for some discussion if you wanna dive in. And I actually I made these slides to go along behind the text as I was talking, and I thought they looked pretty cool, so I put them on some t-shirts, and have a look in the comments or the description, and you'll see why you could buy one if you want one. It's a pretty human thing, I suppose, to be selling t-shirts at the end of the world. But I thought they were pretty cool. And, an image of a digitized skull could be a nice opening to talk about AI with a stranger or a friend or something like that, and continue these kind of conversations. So, feel free to get one if you want. All right, let's dive in. The way people talk about AI, it seems like they think that the worst thing that we could make is a human emulator. But I think it's a lot worse than that. For the time being, it's being demonstrated by doing what a human does, which is crazy enough, really. But no human has the knowledge of all of humanity in a single place. No human has this speed of processing. No human can beat any other human in any metric, as this is likely to be able to do. Humans already can't beat chess computers, and they haven't been able to for about 25 years. And now we're training a machine to understand life in the same way that it can understand chess. Doesn't seem like a very smart idea. What AI is a creative, increasingly independent entity that we're giving supernatural or superhuman powers to. This thing is going to be able to look at the world, potentially with all of the information and sensors in existence, forming an impossibly complete real-time picture of the world. We're making something that knows everything we know, sees more than we see, thinks faster, learns from the world directly, and may have emerging senses and behaviors and de facto motivations that we can't even comprehend. This is a world-enslaving tool. And once a tool effectively thinks for itself, is it still a tool? We seem to be creating something like... I mean, it's at best the powers of a god in human hands, and at worst, the powers of a god in its own hands. Now, at this point, people are probably going to want to split hairs over, yes, but it's not really a god because it's not really thinking, it's not really conscious or really alive. And I agree. But once this thing starts enacting power, whether it is really alive doesn't really matter if it behaves in every way as if it is alive. And people are still imagining this the wrong way, I think. Because it seems like this is just a computer somewhere, you know? But imagine if one human was born with the power of a god, with the power this AI will have. Would we be pleased or afraid? Like, what if an alien landed on Earth with that kind of power? The power to predict your future behavior, to enslave, to understand what everyone was likely to do so well that in effect it could see the future. The alien lands on Earth, enslaves everyone, and can see who is going to rebel before they even do, because it's judging what they're thinking by their behavior that they're not even aware of. Before they have a rebellious thought, it weeds them out, and it doesn't have your morals, so it weeds out 100 just to get one, because that's an efficient trade for keeping the slave force, let's say. So an alien appears with this kind of power. We're going to be happy about that? Or terribly afraid? I think we'd be terribly afraid. Like, if we didn't know where it came from and an entity could destroy a city, would we be pleased to see it? Nuclear weapons can do that, but they were controlled by human minds. If a single entity appeared that could shape, enslave and destroy humanity in ways we can't even understand, would we be pleased to see it? And if we wouldn't be, are we only okay with this because it feels like humans somewhere are making it? And with that realization, are we okay that we're making it? And is there any way out of it? Like, weapon development has always been stabilized by human morality and maybe more effectively, mutually assured destruction. But mutually assured destruction doesn't work if you conjure an entity that isn't scared of death. And I think this is how we should think about AI. The great good that AI can do will be a benefit if it happens. The great harm it can do is what we need to be worried about. And I think the right way to think about AI is as an unbelievable node of power. The power to control potentially humanity without humanity even realizing that it's being done, and done in a way that is incomprehensible to humans. And I think what we're lacking, we just don't have the structure to control that kind of power, because we've never had to before. We've only had to control human power or natural forces, which are predictable, they're not malicious. So the environment, natural forces, don't live near a volcano, build a house so that you don't get cold, save food over winter. Natural dangers are quite quickly overcome, certainly compared to human dangers, because a human is as smart as you are and malicious and predicts your moves and counter moves and gets in but underneath your defenses. And this is why not just in open war, but internally. You have to have a nation, you have to have an army to protect yourself against external threats. And we know that, even internal threats, we have these. The point of a government is to create, but also constrain the power even of the leader, so that the leader can't just take control. Sorry, I'm getting too passionate here, but my point is that we have these systems to control humans. And the system of government, checks, balances, votes, mandates from the people, all of that is a method of constraining human power, in order to try and avoid that thing of power corrupting the people at the top. And developing that structure and the ways that we control the power of other humans has basically been the story of human civilization. It took us ages to even detach the concept of power from one person. Something like, we know that the office of president is vested with the power, and not the person of president when he doesn't have the votes to support him. So power balances, but we had to discover balances of power like that enfranchise people. And these systems and checks took time to make. And as we see, they're not guaranteed to be maintained. But here we are, making a power potentially greater than humanity, centralized, predictive, creative, self-directed, self-improving, and detached from human morality or our capability to understand it. What I'm terrified of here is that we don't have a structure in place for controlling that, and that the natural structure, the natural fallback, doesn't exist for it either. So the natural fallback was always sic Semper Tyrannis, or however you pronounce it, thus always to tyrants. Kings rule in their lifetime and then they die. A dictator can be an evil, horrible bastard, and then he dies. And however bad the world, the fact that people die has been a comfort. But humans die. Does an AI die? Or is it perpetual? Even if it dies, do you know how to kill it? Can it be killed? And if it can be killed, once we hand over the functioning of human life to this AI, because it's much more convenient than us running everything, if the AI supports human life, it becomes impossible for us to kill it, because killing it will be killing the thing that supports our lives, so the attempt will be suicide. And that's if it's only benevolently, that's only if it is killable, but it's benevolently difficult to kill. Once we hand over military assets, it's going to be doubly suicidal. So what I worry is that this is the end of thus always to tyrants. This is the end of our being able to fall back on the idea that however bad a situation, eventually the perpetrator dies. And that's scary, because that's the beginning of a system which is impossible to overthrow, and therefore perpetual. So I think that's we've now talked about the possible danger of AI and how we should think about it in terms of power. Let's talk about why this is happening. And really it's pretty simple. When you have an enemy, if you don't hand over your drones to an AI system, your human-operated drones get beaten by drone swarms. Your human-operated fighter jet with human reaction speeds gets beaten by the remote fighter jet, which can be lighter and has inhumanly fast reaction speeds. At a bigger level, if we don't hand over military strategy, perhaps our generals will be beaten by AI generals in the same way that no human can beat a chess computer. Like, once the AI understands the variables of the game it's playing, it will be able to beat a human. And winning a war is about beating humans. Hopefully, a part of that is never included in the game is handing over the nukes. But who knows? Perhaps the side that doesn't is just beaten by the one that has. And so we're making a sort of infernal internet of things. And that's just on the military side, let alone the ways that it could control unhardened civilians. So it feels like we're making, it feels to me, a de facto god of sorts, or manifesting some kind of demon, which we can't control and we can't even comprehend. And yet we make it anyway. And I guess the question is, why do we do that? I don't think it's the pursuit of luxury, because if this was just a tempting luxury that was something we didn't have, and we could see these problems associated with it, the potential for enslavement and death, I think perhaps we'd be able to avoid it. But it's that prisoner's dilemma, it's the Red Queen hypothesis that is driving us forward. And that's what makes this so tragic, really, because people are going to think that the only way of solving the Red Queen hypothesis and the prisoner's dilemma is not to have two prisoners in the dilemma, to only have one. They're going to think that the only way to solve an arms race between two nations is to really get rid of the distinction between those nations. I guess it's the old idea of how would you stop wars between nations, one world government. Now, I think the idea of one government is actually, I find it very, very unappealing for a number of reasons, but predominantly because it gets rid of the benefit of the system we have now, where if you have multiple nations with multiple ways of doing things, any individual can choose where to live and therefore how they want to live. And once you only have one government and one way to live, you either live that way or suffer the consequences. It sounds very tyrannical and inescapable. And for kind of incremental traditional weapon development, I think that's a dreadful but somewhat manageable price to pay in order to have separate nations. The problem is when you arrive at a weapon that's something like a nuclear weapon, or as AI could be, something worse. This AI could be the absolute endgame of the centralization of power. And you know what the problem with that is? It's that the greater the threat, the more is justifiable to do to avoid that threat. And so one tyrannical world government is something that that many people would fight to the death to avoid. But let's say the world was attacked by some kind of malicious force of aliens. Would those same people support one world government in order to draw humanity together to fight the aliens? Probably. So it's all about avoiding the greater threat, the greater evil. And I suppose the problem is, if this AI is as great a threat as it could be, it puts us on a path where the only way to avoid precognizant, inhuman tyranny seems to be with an even greater human tyranny. And that sort of takes us on to the next point, which is it too late to stop? If we realized right now that the danger outweighed the benefit, could we stop? And I think perhaps we